I still remember the blizzard in Willow Creek Trailer Park. I was one of the residents who had grown accustomed to the harsh winters of this remote mountain town. But that year, the blizzard was unlike any storm we ever experienced. It was colder, fiercer, and it brought with it something evil. The blizzard was unrelenting with no signs of stopping. The wind and snow were so fierce that it was impossible to see more than 50 meters, possibly less. Even the strongest of the residents were struggling to cope with the extreme cold. The temperature had plummeted to dangerous levels, and our trailers were not built to handle such extreme weather. We rugged up as much as we could and hoped it would be over soon. But after 5 days, the blizzard had not died down. If anything, things seemed worse. It soon became apparent that we were ill prepared for such a prolonged storm. Our food and water supplies were running low. We were forced to ration what little we had left. Some of those in the neighboring trailers had already run out of food a day or two ago, and I, along with some of the other residents, had shared what little we had. To make matters worse, the blizzard had knocked out power and communication lines, and we were completely cut off from the outside world. The trailer park generators were old, but well maintained. They should be able to help get us through. I thought to myself. I and some others worked on firing them up. It was a frightening feeling, though, knowing we were alone and isolated. The park's next-door neighbor was 2 kilometers away, but in this blizzard, no one could make it. A few of us decided to meet in Tony's trailer, which was one of the larger ones, to discuss what we should do if the blizzard continued at this rate. I think I'm going to try to make it to town. Ain't no one coming for us, Tony said. Not even trying to hide his anger at the authorities for seemingly abandoning us. Don't be stupid. You won't even make it to the park's front gate in this, Margaret, Tony's neighbor replied. Tony took a sip of his hot tea, thinking up a reply, while the wind and snow battered the side of his trailer. She's right, Tones. I live 20 meters from your trailer, and I almost got turned out there, too. Snow's too deep to drive, and you can't see the tip of your nose in that, Mike added. Tony grunted, more an annoyance than agreement, but didn't say anything more. We spent the next few hours together, drinking hot coffee and playing board games. We agreed that we would want to help each other out, and the others at the trailer park as much as we could. But no one wanted to talk about what would happen in this blizzard if it didn't die down soon. But I'm sure we were all thinking about it. I'm going to call it a night. Thanks for the tea, I said. I started buttoning the top buttons up on my jacket. Yeah, us too, Margaret said, standing up in unison with her husband, John. With that, Mike, Sue, and Phil also stood up to leave, nodding and thanking Tony for having them over. Then, Tony's generator cut out. Sue emitted a small shriek of fear as the trailer was suddenly engulfed in a thick darkness. Just as I reached for the door, the power went out. I could see through a small window the lights in the neighbors' trailers were flickering out one by one in the midst of a blizzard, like blown-out candles. The outside, now, nearly pitch black, and the inside, somehow even darker. After a minute or so, a faint glow illuminated from the interior of Tony's trailer home, as a few of the guests pulled out their phones and switched on the flashlight. The light created flickering shadows around the room, and failed to purely penetrate corners. But it was a relief nonetheless. Mike, who was the closest to the door, started to move towards it, and then reached for the handle. No, don't, I said, quickly grabbing his arm and pulling it out of the way. What the? He started to say, but stopped himself as he watched me lock the door and put my finger on my lips. Something's not right, I whispered. All the generators can't just cut out like that. We need to be quiet and listen. We all stood in silence, listening to the howling wind outside and the creaking of the trailer. It was then that we heard a faint tapping on the window. We all turned to look, but it was too dark to see anything outside. Is anyone there? Margaret called out, her voice trembling. There was no response. The tapping grew louder and more insistent. It was then that we saw shadows outside the window, moving and shifting in the blizzard. It was clear someone or something was out there trying to get in. That's when Margaret repeated, "Is anyone out there?" Only her voice came from outside the trailer. I spun my head to look at Margaret in the dimly lit room. I saw blood drain out of her face, eyes wide open in terror. Someone, something, had mimicked her voice perfectly. We stood frozen in place, not making a sound. "Is anyone out there?" Margaret's voice again, from outside the trailer. Margaret made a whimpering sound and collapsed into John's arms, as her legs had turned into jelly. "Is anyone out there?" This time the voice had dropped in pitch. It was still her voice, but sounded more menacing. "Is anyone out there?" Bang! We all jumped in a fright as something slammed against the door. Bang! This time the door buckled a little. Now more knocking and tapping around us. Every window, every wall. Bang! A third loud hit against the door. Tony whispered urgently, "We need to barricade the door. Quick! Find anything you can to block it." We sprang into action, grabbing whatever we could. Chairs, tables, even the board games we had been playing earlier. We worked frantically, our hearts racing with fear, as the banging on the door grew louder and more insistent. Finally, we had piled up enough furniture against the door to make it difficult for anything to get through. Tony quickly gestured for us to move to the back of the trailer, away from the door. We stumbled over each other in the darkness, trying to get to the back of the trailer as quietly as possible. The tapping and banging on the door, windows, and walls continued, growing more frantic by the second. We could hear other sounds too, guttural sounds and snarls that seemed to be coming from multiple sources. We huddled in the darkness, listening to the sounds outside, afraid to move or make a sound. Then suddenly, it stopped. It was peaceful outside, except for the blizzard. As we listened, we could hear the distant voice of other neighbors. We cautiously approached the windows and peered outside. Despite the rapidly falling snow, we could observe shadowy figures near the adjacent trailers, contorting in unnatural ways with their jerky movements and hunched postures. They beckoned to our neighbors. "No, don't open the doors," I heard myself whisper as I watched in horror as they did exactly that. Through the darkness and the snow, we watched in horror as the figures ripped the doors open and dived into the trailers amidst screams of terror. "No," I heard Margaret whimper. We were left to sit helplessly and listen to deafening screams of men, women, and children, echoing around the trailer park. This was the longest night of my life. I can't say for certain when the final scream was heard. Maybe around 3 or 4 in the morning. Overcome with terror, sadness, and exhaustion, we dozed in and out of sleep. One by one, we woke up to an unusual stillness that had been absent for about a week. The blizzard had finally subsided, and the sun was peering through the last of the clouds. We took our time, but eventually made our way to the windows. Looking outside, we saw the park and all the trailers, blanketed in layers of snow, and our neighbors standing in the snow, staring at our trailer. Their faces contorted into a sinister, unnerving grin that betrayed a hunger rather than happiness. We fled the trailer park, certain they would chase us down. They who had replaced our neighbors. But they didn't. They just watched us flee, standing in the snow. Terrifying grin plastered upon their faces. We never returned to the trailer park. We abandoned the little we owned, and now I'll have a share unit, 2 towns over. It's still too close for me. The local news never reported on the events of last week. At least, not what happened to the residents of our trailer park. But the Weather Channel warns that another blizzard, possibly more severe than the last one, is on the way. We have stocked up on enough supplies to last us a month, even if no longer needed. If you find yourself in an area when a huge storm hits, I urge you to do the same. And don't open the doors for anyone, especially not you.